Not yoga, not walking, not even weights. The number one exercise for women over 40 for bone density is one in two women experience osteoporosis related fractures over 50, and 20 to 30% of women with hip fracture die within a year. Over 70% of women with osteoporosis are only diagnosed after their first fracture. Ironically, we live in a calcium fortification world. Calcium fortified foods, drinks, and supplements, and yet osteoporosis and fractures are still rising. In fact, women in US have one of the highest calcium intake in the world, but also some of the highest osteoporosis rate. Comparing to our ancestors, the prehistorical women from Neolithic age to Bronze Age, they had significant, way better bone density than we do. And this was published in a 2017 studies in Science Advance. It compared prehistorical female skeleton to modern elite rowers, and the result was their arm bones were 11 to 16% stronger. Bones are not static, they're in fact adaptive tissue and is being broken down and rebuilt every single day with a process called remodeling. And there are three types of cells that runs this process. Osteoclast breaks down the bone, osteoblast builds it back up, and osteocytes embed deep in the bone matrix act as sensors, detecting the strain and coordinating the response. When this system is balanced, our bone stays strong. But when it's tipped even slightly, we lose bone density. And this is happening much faster than we thought, especially after 40. This process is governed by a biological rule called the Wolff's Law. Bone adapts to the mechanical load that we place on it. If it's challenged, it strengthens. If it's not, it weakens. That means even when our hormones are stable, the lack of force can still result in the loss of bone density. And in midlife, this system is hit in every direction. And for women, this decline starts way earlier. And there are three major factors that play in a role in our bone density. Number one, hormonal shifts. Estrogen isn't only for reproduction, it's also one of the primary regulators for our skeletal system. It keeps the balance between these two cells, osteoclast, which breaks down the bone, and osteoblast, which builds it back up. When estrogen declines, this balance tips over. Osteoclast becomes more reactive and osteoblast slows down, accelerating bone loss. We lose trabecular bone first, the porous honeycomb-like structure inside the spine, hips, and wrists. And these are the places we tend to fracture. In fact, in this one study, it showed that women can lose up to 10% of our trabecular bone in the 2 to 3 years before menopause is even complete. And yet, most doctors don't test for it because we're still having our period. Number two, neurological shift. As we know, estrogen also helps to regulate the HPA axis, the stress system. When estrogen declines, this regulation weakens, and our brain becomes more sensitive to stress. Baseline cortisol level rises, especially in high functioning women. Cortisol is catabolic, it breaks things down, including bone. Chronically elevated cortisol level suppresses osteoblasts activity, reduces calcium absorption in the gut, and it also flattens our natural cortisol rhythm. Instead of peaking in the morning and decreasing at night, it stays elevated, which means that our body can never truly enter into full repair mode. That means even if we're taking calcium, our body may not be absorbing it, or even may not even be in the state to use it. Number three, mechanical load. Modern life removes the stimulus that our bones are evolved for. Most women living in modern life, we're not jumping, running, or carrying heavy loads daily. Even though light weights, yoga, and walking feels good and are beneficial to us, they don't send the signals that our bone require to grow. Bones are mechanosensitive. They respond to load, not just to motion. The sensors evolved in this process are called osteocytes. When they detect pressure, they initiate remodeling. This process is called mechanotransduction, when force becomes a biological signal. But if the force is too low or applied too slowly, the signal does not fire and osteocytes stay silent. So, what actually stimulates bone growth? Intensity. Bones respond to strain, where mechanical force is applied with intensity, speed, and directional variety to trigger the adaptation. And this process begins in the bone itself. Bones are aligned with osteocytes, sensor cells embedded in the bone matrix. When you apply enough force, fluid inside the matrix starts to shift rapidly. That fluid movement deforms the osteocyte membranes, triggering ion channels to open. Calcium flows in, signal molecules like prostaglandins and nitric oxide get released, and the pathway is activated. That's what tells osteoblasts to start laying down new bone tissue. But if the mechanical load is too low or too slow, none of this is happening because osteocytes require minimum strength magnitude. That means force relative to our body weight. It also requires a high strain rate, that the speed, how fast this force is applied, and it responds much better to directional variety, meaning not the same movements again and again. That means many movements that we do are actually not designed to trigger the signals and thresholds for bone growth. So, the number one training for bone density for women over 40 is jumping, because jumping meets all these three biological requirements. High strength magnitude, landing generates 4 to 7 times our body weight in force. High strength rate, it happens really fast in milliseconds, and it has directional variety. Each landing is slightly different, activating different planes of motion. But don't just listen to me. Let's see what the data shows. In this one study published in Journals of Women's Health, researchers tested a group of women between the age of 50 to 69 with low bone density and prescribed them a single jumping protocol. Just 10 maximal jumps 3 times a week for 8 months. And guess what they found? They found that for these participants, there was a 3% increase in the broadband ultrasound attenuation, which is the bone ultrasound scores, with almost no commitment. In another study, they tried over 101 postmenopausal women, combining high intensity resistance and jumping with 30 minutes a week and 2 times a week. And contrary to popular belief, not only that they did not have serious injury, but they also see a 3% increase in their lumbar spine density, femoral neck strength improved, and fracture risk decreased. And in the third study, women did hopping leg drills on only one leg. And guess what they found? The bone density went up 3.18% on the hopping leg and decreased on the other, with even a single movement pattern. Now think about our ancestors and the Maasai tribes in Kenya and Tanzania. They didn't do reps in a gym. They jumped, they run, they landed, and they carried. And they have much better bone density than us. And now you might be wondering how you can start jumping. Don't worry, I put a free guide down below in the description where I show you step by step to start jumping the right way, the scientific way, to start bone density growth and prevent injury. And remember, it's never too late to take care of yourself and rebuild health from the inside out. This is your second spring, and I love you.